Welcome into Surviving Paradise, the podcast that takes a sometimes serious, oftentimes humorous look at the claim by Jehovah's Witness leadership that they are providing a modern-day spiritual paradise to the planet. I am your host, Stacy Bauman, former elder, ministerial servant, and a kid raised as a Jehovah's Witness in the 1970s and 80s. As I do, please don't be offended. We try to heal here, have some fun. We get serious, we get sad, we laugh a little. Never meant to offend anyone, no matter where they are on their journey with Jehovah's Witnesses. Walk with me in paradise this week. I think it's time for a refresh on this show's mission statement. I've been putting a lot of thought into this lately, and despite a new person or new people stumbling into this show each week, there are at times that I feel quite redundant in the subject matter. I guess it goes without saying, but I'm going to here validate it. I'm sensitive to it. However, on the subject of Jehovah's Witnesses, I'm also very limited. How I feel about the leadership of Jehovah's Witnesses is very apparent on this show. You can actually see my thoughts on anything and everything they have to say in this show's logo. Sums it up nicely. But please note, when it comes to an ever-evolving mission statement for this podcast, I do my very best to appeal to the older generation of Jehovah's Witnesses or ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, as well as today's generation or younger generations of Jehovah's Witnesses who have absolutely no clue what the reasoning book was or can't remember pink and blue Watchtower and Awake subscription slips. All things my generation remembers. Not to mention, actually, my all-time favorite, the cheese danishes and the warm Shasta sodas at district conventions. I want to also cover relevant subject matter for today's PMOs and POMOs, something I had to learn about whenever I can. Times have changed, as has Jehovah's Chariot, and I know that not everything on this show applies to everyone in every situation. So please note, and I don't know why I feel compelled to say this week, I try to play in both worlds. Validation for those who were required to use a razor on their face and avoided the evils of school dances in the 80s, as well as those that have grown up always understanding that generations apparently overlap. I hope that this makes sense. My mission statement is very simple. And I've said it from the beginning. I hope to get just one person, to listen to their gut and closely examine what they've been told about what's called the truth. That's it. Doesn't matter the age, the gender, sexual orientation, country. We are all the same. Just one person to listen to what their gut is telling them about Jehovah's Witnesses. And I just want to say, I thought it was important to issue that reminder this week, even if it was only for myself, because quite frankly, it gets exhausting talking about these guys, and it's more of the same in many situations. I'll continue to share my own experience, deeper thoughts on subjects, and cover what is happening in real time in God's organization. I'm going to keep mixing it up. There, got it off the chest. And with that, let's jump into the latest installment of JW Broadcasting. It's May 2025 of the last days, and the men chosen by Jesus Christ to speak for him personally, the governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses, has rolled out a spiritual feast for us this month. Are you up for my version of the highlights, most of which, I might add, focus on the first 15 minutes of this broadcast? The entire 55-minute episode follows what we have all grown to see as familiar. It's a standard format, and it is hosted this month by helper to the publishing committee, Gajus Glocketin. Be a bad guy name for a James Bond movie. It actually isn't. And here we go. let the repetition I was alluding to at the outset begin. As is the tried and true formula of their leadership going back well over a century, the very first words out of Gaius' mouth features the perfect example of how the 11 men in upstate New York gaslight Jehovah's Witnesses. The audience is met with the following kickoff comment, quote, "We know what the future holds. Bible prophecy clearly indicates that we are living in the last days. We understand the events that will lead to Armageddon and God's new world." End quote. And we are off. Bold statement, Gaius. They know what the future holds. They say that we are clearly living in the last days that apparently never end. We're in year 111 since Jesus took the throne. And so begins May 2025 JW broadcast. First, the governing body has pushed good old Gajus Glocketin out in front of the camera to tell the world that they know what the future holds. And I gotta say, from sentence number one, the smartest guys on earth are making their first mistake this month. A mistake you can easily spot by simply accessing their Watchtower library. With just the first 6 words of this broadcast, the organization and the guys leading it, they condemn themselves. I burst out laughing. What an intro. I continue to be shocked that there isn't at least one somewhat self-aware man, we all know the ladies aren't involved, there isn't one guy on this group that has a sense of self-awareness. Gaius says they know what the future holds, but he may want to actually consider, well, this is a little bit awkward, their very past. From the Watchtower of October 2008, page 3, Gaius and the guys he works for had this to say, quote, "Compared with God, wait a minute, man is powerless to peer into the future. Do not make your boast about the next day," wrote King Solomon, "for you do not know what a day will give birth to." That observation is still true. No human can foresee his own future. End quote. I'm sorry, we've got a problem from the opening 6 words of the May JW broadcast. Gaius says they know the future. He also says there's no way he can know the future. Let the confusion begin. And as if that isn't bad enough, they seem to have missed a few things in the very book they claim was written just for them, otherwise known as the Holy Bible. How about just one example so we don't bog down? From Ecclesiastes chapter 8, verses 6 and 7 of the New World Translation, we're told, quote, "For every matter there is a time and procedure, because the troubles of mankind are so abundant. Since no one knows what will happen, who can tell him how it will happen?" End quote. Well, according to the May 2025 episode of JW Broadcasting, apparently, let's use one of their favorite words, evidently, the governing body can. They know what the future holds, according to Gajus Glocketin in the first opening words of this broadcast. And so it starts strong. The gaslighting is at a fever pitch by claiming that they have special gifts and know what the future holds. If you don't count that time they said the world would end in 1914, or that time they said millions now living would never die, or they said that Armageddon would come before the end of the 20th century, and well, I guess a few other things we don't have time to list here. Aside from those things, they know the future. But will I encourage everyone who might be bravely listening to study all of these themselves, where they will find rather quickly that the leadership of Jehovah's Witnesses has a 100% failure rate on everything they have ever predicted about the future. The same future they claim they know in the opening words of the May 2025 JW broadcast. However, dear listener, anything and everything they tell you to do right now in 2025, well, you must obey them or you can be shunned. Never mind their failure rate, don't bring it up. It isn't important what they said in the past about the future, and it's not important what they say today about the future. They just want you to know they know all the details. And so, we are 6 words into this broadcast, and here we are. But it sure serves as an excellent example of what these men do to an estimated 8 million plus Jehovah's Witnesses on a weekly basis. They grab their brains early, and they set the foundation for everything that comes next. And they have been doing this from the beginning of this organization. One quick example, then we'll move on. We all know I get off the rails at times. Remember, the claim is that they know what the future holds. Go watch it yourself. It's on the site. Just like Judge Joe Rutherford did, remember, when Jesus chose this organization in 1919. As an example, in 1918, Judge Joe Rutherford said that 1920 was the end of Christendom and all governments. But, well, when you know the future, you just change it once it has become the past and it gets awkward. Jesus' handpicked guy made a few creative changes to his book, Studies in the Scriptures, The Finnish Mystery. For younger J-dubs, go look this up. But between the 1918 and 1926 editions of this Holy Spirit nugget right from the heavens, see if you can spot how well leaders of Jehovah's Witnesses, quote, know the future. Page 258 has this fact. I'll read first from the 1918 edition that went out to all of God's people. Quote, even the republics will disappear in the fall of 1920. Wow, 2 years in advance, the judge knew the future. Back to the quote, the 3 days in which Pharaoh's host pursued the Israelites into the wilderness, well, they represent the 3 years from 1917 to 1920, at which time all of Pharaoh's messengers will be swallowed up in the sea of anarchy. End quote. The Bible says it was 3 days, and it has a very special significance. But would you look at this? By the 1926 edition of the same book, well, it's awkward. Quote, same sentence, page 258. Even the republics will disappear in the time of anarchy. Wait, what happened in 1920? Don't ask. Quote, the 3 days in which Pharaoh's host pursued the Israelites into the wilderness may represent the 3 years preceding the time of anarchy, at which time all of Pharaoh's messengers will be swallowed up in the sea of angry humanity. End quote. A couple of changes there. In 1918, it's all done by 1920. When you're still around in 1926, you just kind of tweak a few words in the book. Jesus evidently forgave his favorite mouthpiece on earth at the time. You see, Judge Joe also claimed that he knows what the future holds, just like Gaius and the 11 guys in New York do today. because just a few years later in 1925, the king followed up this book, The Finnish Mystery, with another book. Oh no, it was titled Millions Now Living Will Never Die. Now look, despite the fact that those folks are all dead, don't let that make you question their authority. Don't do that. These guys truly know what the future holds. And here we are 100 years later in 2025, and wouldn't you know it, they still know the future. I apologize. Please carry on, Gajus Glocketin. We got the early lie to build on in this episode. We make a bold statement. We call it a fact. They've been doing this for well over a century. And his next comment sets the tone for the rest of the broadcast. He dips into one of their favorite tricks. He reaches into their bag of tricks and he pulls out one that's worked on Jehovah's Witnesses for centuries. Fear. Fear. It's the perfect cocktail. Gajus Glocketin then says this, quote, however, we don't know the exact events we will experience personally. Wait a minute, you know the future, but you don't, never mind. Quote, for example, you may wonder, will I experience a natural disaster? And if so, what kind of disaster? How will persecution affect me? Will I end up in prison? As I get older, who will care for me? Have you ever asked yourself similar questions? Has this uncertainty made you anxious or fearful? End quote. Well, I got to tell you, when I clicked on the website, coming for some encouragement, I was feeling okay, but, well, I am now. I am a little anxious and fearful, Brother Gajus. He continues by saying such feelings really mess with your thinking. A Jehovah's Witness or a Bible student may be here following up on Jesus' invitation, to go to him. If you're toiling or you're loaded down, remember, and Jesus said he would refresh you, he'd refresh us. But Brother Glocketin wants to remind you that a living hell is just right around the corner. And guess what? It's waiting for you. During this segment, they're rolling canned video shots of kids, children in collapsed building, sitting in rubble, broken down, with broken bicycles nearby. Shots of people handcuffed, being led into prison cells, and they follow it with old people, alone in rooms, broken down, sick, and alone. No one to care for them. They hit you with this. And I got to tell you, it's just like Jesus said, I'm feeling so refreshed. It's very encouraging. The older woman, who is apparently worried about who will care for her, I got to tell you, struck me as particularly ironic, considering, it's 2025, and she should be, looking about 19 years old on the back of a giraffe by now. Oh, and the endless reminders that these are the last days and paradise is just seconds away. So why are we seeing an old woman anxious about getting old and sick with no one to take care of her? Hits me right in the face. How much longer are we going to be here, Brother Glocketin? Doesn't answer. But the formula is in place. A formula that they've been using to unnerve Jehovah's Witnesses for well over a century. And as I've stated here before, used to unnerve me in public talk outlines. The first 10 minutes of every public talk outline that I was giving as an elder, the world is terrible. You should be very, very afraid. We will remind you of this over and over and over again. Not feeling sick? Well, you could get sick. Haven't been in an earthquake yet? Well, you might be. Out there at the book cart? Might be in prison soon. Then they take Jehovah's Witnesses and claim, well, come to us. We have all the answers for those worries. He goes on to say that these terrible feelings will all go away if we are all well prepared for them. What? He says, quote, for example, do you remember the feature drama from the 2023 convention, Commit Your Way to Jehovah? End quote. I want to state here on this, as is the psychology of Jehovah's Witnesses, I guarantee you almost no one remembers it. They don't remember it. There might be a few, but most don't. But brace yourselves for the shocking answer to all of your problems, including natural disasters, persecution, and growing old. Interesting selection of anxieties. Wouldn't you agree? He says, giving us the answer, quote, and again, pointing at that Commit Your Way to Jehovah drama on the video screens in 2023, quote, it illustrated how following the organization's direction saved lives during times of political unrest. End quote. Okay, Gaius, got it. I think you're forgetting that following the organization's direction during times of political unrest has also gotten a lot of innocent people killed. Lots of them. You want to look at Nazi Germany? You want to look at Rwanda? You want to look at Malawi? Where do you want to go? You've been rolling out Eritrea in recent months, pointing at those poor people sitting in prison cells and getting killed too. But you might remember this one. It's probably why they need the new movie studio. They want to show movies like this. The drama features, the one he's using as an example, that is, what I believe is, again, an African country. They like to go to Africa when making a point about people who are less fortunate. It's a country, you remember, that is facing civil unrest. It shows a brother. He has to decide if he's going to obey a letter from the branch office, or is it just paranoia, or should he obey his own gut? It's a real quandary. And if you're left with doubt, we get shots of soldiers with machine guns, kids running scared. I want to remind everyone, when they're playing this at the convention, children are watching this. Yeah. And for those of us who grew up with this fear, you know what I speak of. And then it shows the brother packing his car and leaving wherever it is he lives. And so the message continues. You must be obedient to the organization and its leadership. And if you're left with doubt, we get shots of soldiers hurting people. You and your kids might be dead unless you listen to us. Following the organization is a message that is on loop for Jehovah's Witnesses, with the outcome for not listening to the 11 men in New York shown to them. The end is almost always death. Isn't that encouraging? Jesus, I came to you because I was toiling and loaded down, and boy, is Gajus Glocketin giving me something to think about. I feel warm and fuzzy. But make no mistake, right beneath the frosting, illustrations of paradise, fuzzy animals, and youthful skin, the cake, well, it's made of misery. And if you don't eat it the way they want you to eat the cake, you might just die. Here's a few images to remind you. Just when a person thinks Jehovah's Witnesses are different from other Christian religions, they realized that they swapped out certain words and pictures, but the message is the same. You get heaven, or for Jehovah's Witnesses, most of us want to live in paradise, or you get eternal hell, which doesn't exist for Jehovah's Witnesses. You just get killed forever. All of it is contingent on obeying the men at the top of this organization. And this message has been coming fast and furiously over the last couple of years. They removed Tight Pants Tony. They brought in some new, younger governing body guys. One guy's a real estate expert. They want your strict obedience. And they're here to remind you in video and with a guy talking softly, like you might be 8 years old, to remind you that if you don't do what he says, there's a good chance you're going to end up dead. Brother Glocketin now sets off on a path to convince everyone watching that they must obey the governing body. If they forget death, he's going to go practical here. If you want to stave off anxiety, depression, and fear. And oh, the irony. He starts by saying he is going to review what we are already doing in life and that we have no reason to be fearful or anxious. And as is the formula, he picks up that ancient book, the Bible, that features stories about burning young girls alive, killing people who are just camping on your property, and stoning a guy for picking up fire kindling on a Sunday morning. But put that all aside, my friends. He skips that Old Testament and he takes the audience to the New Testament, specifically Apostle Peter, and sticking to their tried and true formula, makes up a bunch of stuff about Peter that absolutely no one could ever know. Hold that. I'm getting a message in my earpiece here. Sorry. Peter's watching from heaven, or so says Jehovah's Witnesses. So maybe Peter had something to do with writing the May 2025 broadcast. I cannot confirm that, but they do believe it. But here comes the fabricated stuff about Peter. Using the Bible, Gajus Glocketin says things like, quote, Peter was getting older, may have wondered how he and other elderly ones would be cared for later in life. He may have perceived that aging and declining health may have created fear in some. Doesn't that sound like the situation we are in today? End quote. Gotta say, for a guy who started this broadcast saying they know the future, he uses a lot of maybes in these comments about Peter. He may have, he might have, yeah, maybe. And yes, Gaius, people age, including Peter, if he was real, and it's not fun at times. It isn't. It's always been this way, actually. But I immediately thought, Peter may have also wondered if there would ever be an internet. It's possible. I can certainly pull this out when I want to write a talk, right? Peter that is, may have wondered if man would ever make a machine to wash his clothes, or if there would be underwear that breathed a lot better, in that hot Middle Eastern sun. He may have, let's be honest, he may have, folks. The list of things a man in the first century may have wondered about is endless. Apply it as you will. So why stop there, Gaius? Why? He may also think you're handsome. He may also think you're the best speaker in the organization. He may. Your use of an ancient Bible character and what he may have wondered about, or in this case, may have been anxious about, is a formula we have all seen in Jehovah's Witnesses before. They use it constantly. You've built a real estate empire on this stuff. I admittedly wondered if Peter was anxious at all about child protection in the future, or if a great-looking Jehovah's Witness brother would play him in the movies they're making about him at the new studio in Ramapo. Can I get a good-looking guy to play me? No one is sure. But we are told Peter likely worried about getting old. He may have. Okay, then. We know this formula. We grew up on it, for many of us. But Brother Gajus Glocketin goes a direction I wasn't expecting. And to be honest, I should have. He takes the audience to 1 Peter 1, verse 13 of the New World Translation, which says, quote, So brace up your minds for activity. Keep your senses completely. Set your hope on the undeserved kindness that will be brought to you at the revelation of Jesus Christ. End quote. He then says, quote, So did Peter tell the brothers to stockpile money or supplies? end quote. First, wait, what? Where did that come from? And second, Gaius, based on the way you're reasoning, he may have, he may have told them to stockpile money. How would you know? Just doing what he does. We went from Peter and his peers being anxious about getting old seconds ago to a not so subtle message to not stockpile cash. I don't even know where the segue happened. Nothing new here. The message continues with Jehovah promising to protect his people, and there is no need to be anxious. All of this despite the fact that anxiety, fear, and depression are dominant dynamics in this organization. One very quick example of this can be seen in former Jehovah's Witness gone author Jerry Bergman's collection of mental health studies called, quote, Paradise Postponed and Postponed, Why Jehovah's Witnesses Have a High Mental Illness Level, end quote. Maybe this is what Peter was talking about? Note what he says in the book. Quote, Jerry Bergman monitored the admissions to state and private mental hospitals and local mental health clinics in Ohio from 1972 to 1976. From this study of 102 cases, he estimated the mental illness rate of Jehovah's Witnesses is approximately 10 to 16 times higher than the rate for the general non-witness population. End quote for a moment. He goes on and continues by listing the three factors that he believes in his studies that lead to high levels of anxiety that the Gajus Glocketin is here in the May 25 broadcast admitting exists among Jehovah's Witnesses. Here's what Bergman found and what he says, quote, they are things like changes in policy. The Watchtower is in a perpetual state of doctrinal change, often flip-flopping as many as 3 or 4 times on a single issue, end quote. True. In the Watchtower Library. The belief that a theocracy is a problem, according to Bergman. And finally, quote, many witnesses harbor a deep-seated fear, fueled by a long history of doctrinal reversals and prophetic failure, that the Watchtower, this being the fear, is a false religious organization. Since this idea has earth-shaking implications for followers of that organization, they refuse to explore their fears, preferring to rationalize or suppress rather than acknowledge and deal with them. End quote. Truth. And for those of us that have left and went through the pain of leaving, those in that situation right now, those who have been shunned, all of us can relate to this dynamic. You can look to parents or those that are still stuck in this organization and just loving this May 25 episode. Why are they still there? They've never been right about a single thing. Fear, suppression. But the May 2025 JW broadcast doesn't cover any of this. It just says anxiety might be pressing on you because you're getting old. Or maybe you're afraid of persecution. Gee, I wonder why. Or maybe you're afraid of a natural disaster happening to you. If you can't see the clear distraction that they are constantly creating, that much of the anxiety a Jehovah's Witness deals with is due to them, then look no further than what Gaius says next on the broadcast. He hones in on 1 Peter 1:13, where he says, quote, to brace your minds for activity, end quote. For a long time Jehovah's Witness, this is usually where if you're listening, you're at a Kingdom Hall, you begin to drift away to what you're having for dinner or dream of just going outside to play if you're a kid. You've heard all of this before. Gajus Glocketin is about to say that if you're afraid of dying in an earthquake or getting old or being thrown in prison for 11 guys you're never going to know, well, you just need to do more for them. That is what's going to keep your anxiety and fear at bay. He goes on a very childish and condescending tone, a soft-spoken rant about the preaching work. A preaching work, I don't know about you, I haven't seen anybody at my door in years. And trust me, I'm waiting for them. Blah, 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 as he continues. Go tell Jesus, people about Jesus, excuse me. And they can only get to know Jesus, by the way, through their organization. This is kind of summarizing Cliff Note edition. Without repeating it verbatim, please go watch this if you're interested. He claims that circling the block in a minivan, knocking on the doors of empty homes, and standing in front of a book cart, staring into your iPhone, that all of these things build a Jehovah's Witnesses' faith in this organization, and thereby it alleviates your anxiety. Never once mentioning that this very act and requirement from these guys is what's causing me anxiety. At no point does he address the obvious elephant in the room, that this endless grind of preaching about something that has never shown up, that they've been 100% wrong on, of being constantly rejected, of watching people walk by you knowing they're going to die, of hearing to do more. Well, look, the preaching work for some might be the greatest source of anxiety. But during this broadcast, he claims seeing people become Jehovah's Witnesses will alleviate your anxiety and fear. It will bring you joy. He doubles down by claiming that doing more preaching, well, it gives you an attaboy from Jehovah. It puts you in Jehovah's protective hands, and you will have no reason to worry about the future. He goes on to push pioneering and says that being active in the ministry is the first step in being prepared for tomorrow's anxieties. You don't need antidepressants or to alter unhealthy brain chemistry or thoughts caused by these very guys, or to be in fear of who might just be sitting next to your kid at the Kingdom Hall. No, you just need to get your ass out in the preaching work and hand out more of their literature. You, my friend, by obeying, that's the first step, are ready for anything. Very clear that they're back to pushing the one thing they know how to do, getting the numbers out in the neighborhood. Slide that magazine under your neighbor's doormat, and wow, all of my fears are gone. No more anxiety. Oh, wait, you mean natural disasters still happen? Wait a second, I'm still getting old by the second? Wait a minute. People are still throwing pushers of this cult into prisons around the world? Yeah, going out to preach actually can cause the anxiety. All true. But stop your worrying courtesy of this landmark May 2025 broadcast, Spiritual Food at the Proper Time. And I alluded to it earlier, but when was the last time you had a Jehovah's Witness come to your door and try to actually teach you something about the Bible? When was the last time? Even if they came, did they hand you a publication? Were they unable to answer questions? Did they point you to a website or hand you a tablet? When are these guys in New York, and I'm sorry it's much too late, when are they going to realize how awful the preaching work is? How awful it is, particularly in our modern time dominated by technology. Wait a minute. I'm not giving them enough credit. They are building a movie studio. That's what you do when the world's about to end. But they never address the real source of misery. in many Jehovah's Witness lives. What is that source? Them. Them. The answer to those worries, the answer to your anxiety, if you think you're going to go to prison, or the answer to your worries about the future, because they know it, is to tell more people about them. That's right. That's the answer. It's unbelievable. All these years later, it's still just unbelievable. But what comes next is now a regular message from God's one and only organization. Gajus Glocketin drones on about thinking ability and, quote, says, "We want to make good decisions, don't we?" End quote. And as always, they try to crawl inside our heads to capture even our thoughts. We want to make good decisions. By the way, one of the things he goes on to say is a good decision is baptism. Oh, yes. Baptism into Jehovah's Witnesses is a good decision and will help you with future anxieties. And as a public service announcement, I just want to say here and now, if you're studying with the witnesses or a kid growing up as one, do not get baptized. Don't do it. It's a trap. But Gajus Glocketin claims that since baptism, we have all made, quote, many good decisions to follow his directions that often come from his organization, end quote. Are you picking up a theme? Yeah, we're back to the organization. Not to mention, last I checked, where else does Jehovah give directions from? Thanks, Gajus. Does he have a TikTok? Is he giving smoke signals? It all leads back to them. But then he addresses changes, where he says, quote, some changes were easy, others were hard, especially when we didn't understand the direction or agree with it, end quote. And I am here to tell you, with that, Houston, we have a problem. Or should I say, Jesus' earthly kings have a big problem. This brought back so many memories for me of being in elders' meetings with a group of us guys. Of course, we were chosen by Jesus too, sitting in the back of the Kingdom Hall talking about what to do for next month's local needs talk. This is a universal local needs talk. Changes are hard. We don't understand why we're doing it, and I don't agree with it. Folks, we've been seeing this theme with them almost since the beginning of the year. Whether it's JW Broadcast, all of the other videos that they push out, you don't need to understand why we're making these decisions. David Splain told people to stop bitching about the movie studio. You don't need to know why we're building it. You can always tell things aren't going well, especially at headquarters, by what these men focus on in their talks. This gives me, I have to be honest, when he said this, basically admitting to the universe that there are those that are questioning things, they don't understand it, they've actually arrived at conclusions and don't agree with it. This gives me so much hope. So much hope. There are enough people questioning these 11 men that these guys are desperately trying to get out front of it all. And I just mentioned it. First, it was David Splain telling people to stop questioning their movie studio project. Now, just weeks later, it's Gajus Glocketin admitting that some just don't understand facial hair. They don't understand women's slacks. They don't understand the movie studio. They don't understand governing body members that were born in the 70s. What? They don't understand why they're mothballing publications that saved lives and the teachings that people suddenly can do what they want and still survive all the way up through the Great Tribulation. Wait a minute, that's rather important. They don't understand any of this stuff. Why? Because it's a complete flip from what they've been teaching for centuries, which means by extension that Jehovah and Jesus have been allowing people to believe false teachings and lies for decades and decades and decades until the 11 men in New York changed them. That's it. And make no mistake, this JW broadcast is a full admission that at least a few people, probably the now adult children of those that wrote questions from the readers back in the day, well, they have a few questions, and as I like to say, my kind of people. And I'm going to say it here. They're addressing this in the short term. Then, as they always do, if I had to highlight one thing from our conversation today, as they always do, think about this. They rely on Father Time to make it all become a distant memory. They're fully prepping the next generation of Jehovah's Witnesses, most of whom, just being blunt, don't study, they don't read, they're not even encouraged to, or look into the organization's teachings or history. Father Time is their friend. They're ripping off a Band-Aid the last couple years because they're prepping for the decades ahead. Future Paradise Dweller Gajus Glocketin then goes for the knockout punch. He says, quote, "Can you think of a time when you made a difficult change for Jehovah? Did you later see how following his direction led to good results? Your love for Jehovah and your deep love for him helped you to make wise decisions." End quote. Please, if you're a Jehovah's Witness bravely listening, pay attention to what Gajus Glocketin is doing to you. What is all of this your stuff? Your? Isn't it we? Isn't it us? How about our love and our decisions? According to Gajus Glocketin and the guys who pushed him out in front of the camera, it's your. You see, Gajus and his 11 bosses are different from you and I. This broadcast is addressed to you, not them. Distinction, separation, for an organization that claims they don't have a clergy or laity distinction. This guy is on camera throwing down some you versus them. Not to mention, he is trying to tell how you felt when you made changes you didn't agree with. Never once mentioning if you didn't, his organization would tell your own family and friends to shun you, possibly forever. But they marched this charming old guy out into a camera. He has a nice, soft, condescending voice and a really cool accent that's kind of distracting. So we all just bob our heads, nod along, and move on to his next point. But he's addressing change and how you should think about change. And he's making a distinction between you and them. But his claim about remembering a time when we made changes for Jehovah Read organization and how it later led to good results, well, I got to tell you, in my opinion, this is an all-timer. Nothing more than gaslighting generations of people, including those no longer with us. For example, I remember that time I listened to them and I passed up on college, scholarships, and more. I just forget it. Well, let me tell you, I didn't understand it then at all. And can I expect to see good results, as you say, while I'm still here, Gajus? I'm 57. My retirement account, if you can call it that, ain't looking too hot. Not as good as it could. Or how about, you mentioned changes, making good decisions, and how it led to good things. How about the kids on the cover of the May 22nd, 1994 Awake who are now dead because their grandparents could actually take blood to survive in the 1940s, but the organization decided to, as you say it, change. And what were the good results you speak of? Grandparents lived and took blood. Grandchildren in 1994 awake dead. Come to think of it, this is the May 2025 JW broadcast. Maybe you dumbasses should pay a tribute to those kids on the cover of the May 1994 Awake. They've been gone for 31 years this month. Changes. And as he says, good results. Good results indeed, Gaius. But please continue on, telling us how we should view changes as a witness, and what he says next should cause any Jehovah's Witness watching this broadcast to sit up real straight in their chair and start paying attention. He says this, quote, "What's the point? Doing what Jehovah asks us today not only brings good results now, but also prepares us for tomorrow. It ensures that when we are faced with a critical situation, we will naturally follow Jehovah's direction." And then the obligatory question that's meant to be a mind, quote, "Isn't this the best way to prepare for the future?" End quote. I was livid. I've given a few examples of Jehovah's Witnesses obeying direction and changes from Jehovah, his organization. They include changes that resulted in death, lost potential, lost income, lost family relationships, and for children, lost innocence. Or how about those people that put off having children because the paradise would be here any second now? They obeyed Jehovah in real time, turned out well for them. They're childless. Being a Jehovah's Witness today, unless you're barely active or maybe you're a PMO, it's a recipe for misery. But the message is to follow directions. That's the entire message in this broadcast, with a bookend question from Gaius that insults your intelligence. Quote, "Isn't following our direction the best way to prepare for the future?" As a kid raised as a Jehovah's Witness, a former elder, I pioneered, this is nothing new. At my age, I can confirm with a smile on his face that Brother Gajus Glocketin is out here stealing souls. That's what he's doing. Stealing your soul. In a twist of irony, he then goes on to point to a very elderly sister, complete with a video showing us how old and frail she is, who escaped the fires in California, and then he goes on to take credit for her survival because she followed the organization's directions. It wasn't the firemen or the government warnings or the car that they show her driving. No, she's only alive because of the governing body. They saved her, just like they're saving you and me one day at a time, but only if we follow their directions. But the irony is that they're showing a very elderly woman being saved without commenting on the fact that she is very elderly, the obvious, and that following the organization's directions her entire life ultimately brought the same damn results as the guy next door, who has likely never been a Jehovah's Witness. She has gotten old, and no paradise has ever shown up. It's not in sight. Swallowing their endless changes and directions is going to have the same ending as everyone else, including non-Jehovah's Witnesses. As I like to say, just nod your head and pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. He continues with more, but I was left pondering how blatantly deceptive this organization has always been. That's how this hit me this week. Yeah, sure, I was like everyone else while a practicing Jehovah's Witness, but damn, it hits hard when you have broken free, when you know good people that you love are still inside. They are openly deceiving people. They're not trying to hide it. You see, this entire May 2025 broadcast is discussing how to deal with anxiety and change and fear of the future. Quote, remember what he said, quote, well, it's not him. I was going to be deceptive myself and I decided against it. Here's some of my thoughts. Quote, will an earthquake swallow me like the little girl and her puppy on the inside cover of the From Paradise Lost to Paradise Regained book? Will I end up in a concentration camp like those poor kids in Nazi Germany? Will I get old and no one will take care of me, especially my witness kids who are now shunning me? Thank you for these answers to my worries, Brother Glocketin. I'm going to make sure I follow your directions, never question a change, and go out preaching more. That's sure to alleviate any of my concerns. That's my generation's thought process. Trust me, we feared all this stuff. We were scared constantly. Scared of everything. We were scared of Smurfs. We were scared of cute girls. They were evil harlots who were trying to ruin our lives and keep us from paradise. Everything was scary. But I watched this broadcast marveling at their ongoing deception. You see, Gaius and his 11 bosses in upstate New York are trying to get out front of concerns that are cropping up in Jehovah's Witnesses today. Concerns about the future. The future. And well, I couldn't help but think, I wonder how the kings in New York missed Jesus' comments on this very subject. The subject of anxiety about the future, the very thing they seemed very obsessed with in this episode. Does anyone else remember what Jesus said? If not, you can find it in their book, Matthew chapter 6 and verse 34 of the New World Translation, where Jesus said, quote, so never be anxious about the next day, for the next day will have its own anxieties. Each day has enough of its own troubles, end quote. Wait a minute, I'm confused. Did I read that right? Is this the same Jesus Christ greenlighting this May 2025 broadcast about worrying about the future? About anxiety about the future? Wait, and did I miss it? Where in this verse does he say something about obeying directions and accepting changes we don't understand or agree with? That being blindly obedient leads to good results. That's what Gaius is saying. It's right there in the book. I'm hoping to appeal to a Jehovah's Witness who has the same book. The book don't match the broadcast. His talk continues with bashing career goals and pursuing them and how that may lead to a strained relationship with Jehovah. You want a good career? You want to actually have a home? Well, you're anxious about the future and Jehovah ain't happy about that. And Gaius, here we are again. You're going to make me do it, aren't you? Yep, it's just too good. There's just too much to be said about this. From the Awake of the 1969 May 22nd issue, page 15, you'll recognize it, folks, on all things careers. Quote, if you are a young person, you also need to face the fact that you will never grow old in this present system of things. Why not? Because all the evidence and fulfillment of Bible prophecy indicates that this corrupt system is due to end in a few years. Of the generation that observed the beginning of the last days in 1914, Jesus foretold, this generation will by no means pass away until all these things occur. Matthew 24:34. Therefore, as a young person, you will never fulfill any career that this system offers. If you are in high school and thinking about a college education, it means at least 4, perhaps even 6 or 8 more years to graduate into a specialized career. But where will this system of things be by that time? It will be well on the way toward its finish, if not actually gone. End quote. 1969, Gaius. It looks like back in 69, Jehovah's Witnesses were also anxious about the future. That was only 55 years ago. But you said it was a fact. You remember when it was called a fact that people my age would never need a job because we would all be in paradise. I mean, this didn't cause any anxiety, right? This didn't cause anxiety for people in my generation. I bring this one out because for a younger Jehovah's Witness in 2025 that's here listening, here's my advice to you. Run. Run. Don't walk. Run toward your dreams and goals. Do it. The May 2025 J-Dub broadcast is nothing new. They did it to us. They did it to me. They're doing it to you. This deceptive broadcast continues. Moving off of Gaius and how to deal with anxiety, it continues with that neat segment about preaching called Iron Sharpens Iron, about how to preach to people. It gives us pointers. In this segment, we get a personal experience of a boy turned man from India, and I'll sum it up. It is a gut punch, awful, painful experience. Jehovah's Witnesses, though, are the most loving people on earth, and it saved him from all the evils of the world. There you go. There's the experience. It is a really painful one. From there, Brother Glocketin then introduces this month's segment called For a Happy Marriage When Viewpoints Differ. This is becoming a regular. Further proof, I might add, that Jehovah's Witness marriages are taking a hit inside the organization. The fact that they're dedicating marriage as a subject in their broadcasts, very clearly a problem. Incidentally, and I thought it amusing, they mix up the shots of married couples once again with videos of them playing racket sports. This is becoming a theme. It was tennis last month. This month it's badminton. Someone back there at headquarters loves the whole volleying illustration that racket sports provide. And I'm going to go on record right here and now and say we can expect a volleyball video segment in the near future. See, I know the future too. We're going to get a volleyball shot. Bank it. And also I want to confirm for those very curious, still no Serena Williams sighting in the racket sport video shots, probably because she would absolutely crush any brother who challenged her. And we can't have that. We can't have women beating men. Or maybe she's just too busy crip walking. I don't know, not sure, but she's not here. I did notice they were careful not to put the two sisters that are playing the racket sports and all things marriage in some really tight-fitting yoga pants. They were careful not to do that. Wear those baggies. We all know we don't want sisters stimulating the brothers watching this video. Can't have that either. Onward we go. But we see in this segment the witness couple arguing over money. And my favorite shot was him getting pissed about organic tomatoes. He wanted tomatoes, she wanted organic. I'm not kidding. Go watch. Organic's a little more. Can't have that. She wants different tomatoes. She also wants to go out to lunch in the video segment. He looks at the menu and the prices and tells her it's too much money. And finally, she, you noticing a trend here, wants a new coat, and he balks at the price of the quote. And if you're picking up what they're putting down out of New York, you sisters, you women, stop asking for everything your way. Stop asking your husband to spend money. That's it. She wants things. He says, no, we don't have the money. He runs the show. Go watch the video. I just can't. But then we get a peek behind the curtain of this married couple. They hit in this segment on married couples disagreeing on how to care for aging parents. And I continue to be amused at the lack of self-awareness back there. We get canned video of the couple with his parents in what is a gorgeous home. That's right, the same couple that was arguing about money. She can't afford a coat or an organic tomato. But look at this house. It's got to be $500,000 somewhere. There's beautiful furniture. There's tables filled with food, what looks like by professional Michelin award-winning chefs, for only 4 people in the video, 2 of them being frail elderly folks. And it's clear in the video these people have money. So do you mind showing us a Jehovah's Witness couple that are arguing about money, that are barely making ends meet? Maybe they're crammed in a 2-bedroom apartment and they're taking care of his mom in the 2nd bedroom and they have kids. They're having trouble getting the kids' school clothes. No, we don't see anything that's practical or real for the vast majority of Jehovah's Witnesses. We get your standard Caucasian couple with a beautiful house in the Hamptons that just can't afford organic tomatoes. Okay, then. By the way, if you watch JW Broadcasting, you'd think that all witnesses have a gorgeous home. Their only real problem is the money? Yes. And finally, I just say in this marriage segment, I really appreciate how Jehovah's Witness men, even the younger ones, even the young guys, both guys, the old guys, the young guys, they all wear the nicest sweater vests. Have you ever noticed that? I don't know a single guy that wears a sweater vest, but Jehovah's Witness men do. They're not just any sweatered vests. They look like they're the $80, $90 variety. This broadcast probably isn't doing much for marriages in places like Africa or other third world countries or just poorer communities in the United States. But I'm sure it's very encouraging in saving marriages for those people, even as they go out just looking for clean water or taking a 2nd or 3rd job. It's just incredible, the lack of self-awareness in New York. But finally, this plate of spiritual food wraps up with another favorite, the dynamic brother Harold Corkin, who is also a helper to the publishing committee. I'm not going to cover this in depth, in any of the depth it deserves, but he is encouraging Jehovah's Witnesses to watch how they speak to people. He's encouraging them to have empathy and compassion for people, that we don't know their circumstances. He lists off some awful ones, that they may have had a harsh childhood, or maybe they suffer from depression. But it's really something to watch an organization that features a system, a dynamic in place for people who don't agree with them and how they will be treated. He's on here counseling witnesses to be kind to people, to be empathetic, to be compassionate. You don't know their background. You don't know their personal aches and pains and fears. The same organization that will go out and tell these people that if they don't obey them, they're going to be nothing but bird food any day now. They're on here giving the rest of us pointers on tolerance, empathy, kindness, and love. He goes on in this final talk about consoling others. Even as this is the same organization that refuses to report child abusers or to turn over the database of child abusers to the authorities so they can protect other kids. This is the same organization that practices shunning for simply disagreeing with them, I might add, or as Gaius is addressing, not adjusting to their changes. Even if you don't understand the changes, you don't need to. Check that brain. This whole talk at the end of the episode, it just rings empty. It's empty and it's embarrassing. It's that cringe. It's that secondhand embarrassment you feel with Jehovah's Witnesses. He's telling others to speak consolingly to depressed people, even as they practice things like not protecting kids and shunning them. They even fight for their rights to practice shunning and not having to report child abusers in courts of law around the world. And all of it flies in the face of anything Harold Corkin is saying in the May 2025 broadcast. I might remind Harold, by the way, of such consoling comments as this one. From the Watchtower of 2021, September, page 30, quote, "An unrepentant sinner is like a person who has a highly contagious viral infection and needs to be quarantined in order to protect others from getting sick," end quote. I gotta tell you, Harold, this talk in the May 25 broadcast about consoling people and being empathetic, wow. I've always viewed it as an act of love to totally ignore someone who is sick with an infection, as you say. But maybe he forgot this one too. From the Watchtower of 1981, September 15th, page 27, where they said, quote, "It is the disfellowshipped person who has made problems for himself and for his relatives," end quote. Very empathetic, Harold. You're certainly consoling that person, even as you have no clue what they're dealing with as you're talking about this time. How about one more? The Watchtower of July 15th, 1961. They've been doing this a while. Page 420, quote, "Jesus encouraged his followers to love their enemies. But God's word also says to hate what is bad. When a person persists in a way of badness after knowing what is right, when the bad becomes so ingrained that it is an inseparable part of his makeup, then in order to hate what is bad, a Christian must hate the person with whom the badness is inseparably linked," end quote. So very strange, huh? I seem to remember Jesus' words in Matthew 5, 43 through 48, where he commands us all to love our enemies, to pray for them, to help them, that we are nothing if we don't do it. But put that Bible down, my friends. Brother Corcoran wants you to be consoling to people, but only certain people. Only those that they want you to be nice to. Needless to say, I could go on for an hour about Harold Corcoran's talk in this broadcast. It's just hot air. I'm not going to do it. It's all been said before. It's empty. It's insulting counsel to people watching that might be actually missing a family member or dealing with a very private, delicate problem they don't want to share with anyone else. It's incredible. And then finally, to wrap this up, this illustrious broadcast in May concludes with this month's music video. Oh yeah, sing along. The video is called "Every Minute" and features a young family that is, of course, Jehovah's Witnesses, with shots and videos of them interrupting the kids' playtime so they can read the Bible. The young boy puts down his Legos, undoubtedly with his dad, Bible in hand, to read about King David collecting other men's foreskins so that he can get the woman he wants from King Saul. We even see the kids brushing their teeth, followed by bedtime stories from a book sure to make them feel warm and fuzzy. You know the one. My Book of Bible Stories, soon to be the study book for Jehovah's Witnesses this summer. I hope they weren't reading the story of Dinah and Shechem before that little girl in the video goes to sleep, but hey, we got some soft music and the message to make every minute count. Some sister just singing along, make every minute count. Go watch it. In the end, and with intellectual fatigue setting in, the May 2025 broadcast is just another glaring example of the governing body trying to get out front of problems inside their empire. Despite Jesus saying to not look into the future with anxiety, we get a talk about looking into the future with anxiety. Don't be anxious about all the changes. Change is their middle name, after all. Despite the Bible saying Jehovah never changes, don't question that. We got counsel on marriage, or as I read it, counsel to sisters to stop asking for money. They've got a movie studio to build, damn it, send the money to them, bypass the organic tomatoes. We get an old guy telling us to speak consolingly to people, even as they shun them and put children in danger at the Kingdom Hall. And it's all wrapped up with a music video you will never see on MTV. Of course, no one sees videos on MTV anymore, and that gives me anxiety. End of story. As the music video message concludes, the reminder to make every minute count landed with me. It's my hope that anyone that watched the May 2025 JW broadcast will follow that advice. And if you're keeping track at home, you might be wondering how many minutes have passed since the invisible Jesus sat down on his throne in 1914. I'll tell you that at the time of this recording, 1914 was 58,038,986 minutes ago. Keep counting those minutes in service to the governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses. Make every minute count. They're bound to be right at some point. Right? Right? I want to thank you for joining me this week. Make every minute count, wherever you may be. Be well.